What's up, guys? So we're now back with day 12, trying to get everything done. This is pretty much the story of Joseph. This is actually one of the first stories I've ever read in the Bible, and I'm just enjoying it, like reminding myself of where I was at the beginning of my walk back in 2016. And uh, I just want y'all to be encouraged by this story because it's got a lot of ups and downs, but in the end, God works everything out. So throughout me telling his story, I'm going to have Joseph's name interchangeable with Joe, which is just his shortened version of his name. And we're just going to get through this. So as we know from the previous video, Joe's brothers hate him because of the jealousy that they have, that their father is showing him more love than they get. And in the end, it's just a whole bunch of mess. Joseph gets a new coat, nice and cool, clean. And it's just like, bro, what is going on? Jacob just doesn't really know how to show love to all of his sons fairly, and this is what causes them to hate their brother. And this is what makes it worse, is that Joe ends up having two different dreams. One where all of him and his brothers are these haystacks, and his haystack is literally standing up, and then all of his brothers' haystacks are facing him, and they're all bowed to him. That God is going to make Joe the ruler of his brothers. But what they don't realize is that God made the prophecy that all of his family is going to be rulers. It's just that in this case scenario, Joseph is going to be the head one. And in his second dream it's the sun, the moon, and the stars. They're all bowing down to Joseph himself. The sun represents his father, Jacob, and then the moon represents Leah. And of course, the stars all represent his brother. And so even his own father, Jacob, scolded him for this and said, how you going to say me and your mother and all your brothers are going to bow down to you? But nonetheless, he still had a thought, maybe God is going to make him the new leader of our clan, of our tribe. This could be similar to the own oracle that he had with his brother Esau when God told Rebekah that her older son would serve the younger. So maybe this is possibly the same case. Nonetheless, Joseph's brothers are tired of him and they're just angry with him at this point. And so we see here that shepherding is the family business. I believe they must have learned from when they were back home with their grandfather Laban. And so Jacob noticed that his sons were out shepherding for a while, and so he sent over Joseph to go and see what was going on, see if everything was good. He only did this because he knew that Joseph was not going to lie, just like he did for his other four brothers earlier. This is probably the most unwise thing Jacob could have done because he knows that his sons hate Joseph. And so Joseph ends up going from Hebron, where they live, to Shechem, which is about 50-mile distance. So that's a lot of walking to be doing for this kind of situation. So this isn't just like go check up on your brothers in the barn that's like 200 yards away. This is, you got to go see what's going on with them. And then eventually a guy that was there in Shechem told Joseph that his brothers had moved on to a neighboring city named Dothan. You can imagine that's a lot of pasturing and walking around. Shepherds are constantly moving and working throughout the day. And this is where Joseph finally catches up with his brothers and sees them afar off. And while he is walking to them, his brothers plot to kill him. Now I know that sounds just like what happened with Cain and Abel. They even mock him, calling him, oh, look, it's Joseph, the dreamer. So Reuben hears about this plot and is just like, nah, we ain't gonna do that. He did hate Joseph too, but he still thought, that's my little baby bro. I got to do something about this. He probably also thought about how Jacob would feel if he would have heard Joseph dying, and it just would cause a whole lot of turmoil like Levi and Simeon did. And so this is part of the reason why that he did this, was because he was probably trying to get into Jacob's good graces again after sleeping with one of his concubines. And so Reuben has this plot to tell his, hey, let's go and throw Joseph in this cistern, this pit, and let him be there. Because, we're out here in the wilderness. He's not going to have any food or water to be able to sustain himself. And he's just going to die on his own. Lo and behold, he had a plot to eventually take his brother out and send him back to Jacob. And all the brothers decide to take Joseph, rip off his coat, and just tore it to shreds and throw him in the cistern. You're probably wondering what a cistern is. It's just a giant hole in the ground. It usually has like a jar or some kind of reservoir where they hold water for later. And that cloak that they ripped off of Joseph represented Jacob's love for him. And so you can imagine that Joseph was devastated when they did that. change of clothes or whenever someone's wearing something, it represents status, position, and authority, like the prodigal son. And so the brothers ended up seeing these Ishmaelite slave traders walking up, and they were like, yo, instead of killing him and having the blood on our hands, Judah is the one that came up with this idea. Instead of killing him, let's sell him to slavery and he's going to die out there on his own. And that way, it's not going to be on our hands, it's going to be on someone else's. And so the same people that were part of the Egyptian slave Hagar's family, the Ishmaelites, now have Joseph as their new slave.
Well, well, well. How the turntables.
And so Reuben comes back and looks in the cistern and is like, where'd Joe at? And that's when his brothers tell him the news. Hey, we sold him into slavery. It's all good. It's all good. And that's when Reuben tore his cloak in grief and was just like, no, and knew that he couldn't get back into his father's good graces after this. So they take Joe's cloak, the beautiful rainbow, however people want to call it, beautiful cloak, and they dipped it in goat's blood. And the same way that Jacob deceived his father Isaac is the same way his sons were deceiving him. They use a goat as a way to deceive their father. And then, of course, after hearing the news of him getting attacked by a wild animal and having the blood of a goat, he was devastated and was beyond repair. Despite his children's efforts in trying to help him, he just had no way of receiving their comfort or their consolation. Since Joseph is gone, so is his heart. All he has is Benjamin left, which is his last son from Rachel. And eventually Joseph gets sent and sold to a master in Egypt named Potiphar. He is the officer of Pharaoh's army, and he's also the captain of the palace guard. So that's Joe's new master. And that's the end of the story for here. But I cannot wait to show y'all the rest of the story, because you'll start to see how good and evil start to get mixed in together. And it just almost seems like it makes no sense why things are happening the way they do. But God ultimately has the final say. So I pray that you guys enjoy these videos, and God bless you.